What is going on, crew? Welcome back to the Boardroom Podcast, where we help you stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. Now, today I'm back with my partner in crime, Tikis. He oversees client success with Charlie AI, and then he also runs Blue Chip, where it's kind of like our done-for-you side, where we come in as strategic partners, growth partners into the business, primarily health and fitness offers. If you're not a health and fitness offer, is really not something that we want to kind of do a long-term partnership with. But anyways, today we want to dive into a couple things, right? The importance of, one, knowing your numbers, and then two, making decisions based on your numbers and not on emotions. Now, Tikis, you're the one that wanted to dive into it. Like, what sparked that topic?
It probably gets sparked a couple times a week, to be honest with you. But this is the first time we're going to unpack it here on the podcast. Basically, is if a client would say like, "Hey, like, what adjustments do I need to make?" Like, if it's in their business as a whole and whatnot. First thing we always ask them is, "All right, well, give me some numbers. Like, where's your number sheet? Can I see your data and whatnot?" And then majority of them will say like, "I don't have anything," or "I haven't filled it out the last few weeks," or something along those lines. So you can't make any educated decisions on your business if you do not have any numbers or data to justify any type of change, because we don't know where to look. Like, where's the bottlenecks? Like, I don't know. Like, what advice am I supposed to give you if you don't help me to make that educated decision back? Right? We're just kind of in the dark. So first thing I would do is like, okay, well, I can't give you any advice. So you need to go back. I would say maybe go back about a month and fill out all the data. Here's a sheet. If you don't have one, we can unpack the sheet here. But here's a sheet. Fill out your numbers, then come back to me, and then I can give you some type of advice where to make any changes and anywhere in your business. So that's kind of like where we're at now.
Because with numbers, like, if you don't have any data gathering in your business, you're making decisions based off how you feel. And one thing you can trust is that your emotions can lie to you, right? There's a difference between like intuition and having like a really strong gut feeling about something, right? Versus just being blind and just being swayed by your emotions, right? A recent example, we have a client who started to kind of develop like a ratio with, as far as like their numbers, where for every X amount of leads generated, X amount of calls are booked. For every X amount of calls are booked, X amount of sales are made. All right. And so this month, they were like, it feels really slow. It feels very slow. And we looked at the numbers. So we looked at the previous month, and it was like, for every X amount of leads generated, X amount of calls are booked. And for every X amount of calls booked, X amount of sales are made. And we're looking at this month, and that ratio stayed exactly the same. For every X amount of leads generated, X amount of calls are booked. For every X amount of calls booked, X amount of sales have been made. And then when we looked at numbers, they were like, oh, I guess this is exactly how November was. I just didn't really know. I just didn't really have the numbers, right? But having numbers and tracking those things inside your business gives you the ability to kind of set some guardrails to test your assumptions, and really make sure like how you're feeling, there's anything to it. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm feeling a certain way and I have some really good numbers and the numbers kind of back up how I'm feeling, I'm like, it feels kind of slow. And I look at the numbers and I'm like, oh, no wonder it feels slow. Like our numbers are down, right? Like we're not on pace. We're slightly behind pace. All right. Or I'm like, I'm getting a sense the market is shifting a little bit, or something has changed in the market, but our numbers look really good. Then I can go, okay, well, I still want to test this assumption to see if there's anything to it. Right now, I can make a decision based on my emotion and intuition and my feeling, but then make sure we're quantifying it with actual evidence. Right. And I think that's something that we do a lot, is we're looking at numbers. And then, I mean, I'll tell you, man, I feel like I want to test this, or, I mean, I feel like we should do this. And we're like, well, let's look at our numbers. The numbers don't look that bad. I think we need to get more data, right? We can make those adjustments, but we need to get more data, right? So it becomes a single source of truth that allows us to just make better decisions.
Correct. And then another thing that clients do get emotional about, right? So let's just say they are tracking the numbers. Fantastic. You're ahead of what a lot of people don't do is track the numbers, right? And then they'll be a little bit too emotional on a day-to-day basis, right? You got to remember, depending on the business you're in, but majority of our clients are high ticket consulting type businesses and whatnot. So you got to give it enough time to even make an educated decision. For example, if I'm emotional and I go, I had a bad day. Oh, numbers they're not there. I'd be like, it's only one day, right? Then the next day, it's not the same. Then the next day, it's not the same. And then the following day, that day made up for the bad 3 days that you just had. So you need to look at averages, not on a day-to-day basis, unless your business really works on a day-to-day basis. Maybe like e-com or something like that, where maybe you have to make a guess within a 24, 48-hour radius. Maybe
I can't
it's a little
even think of a
different.
good business where
Yeah, it's
there's
tough.
no
Like,
real business that runs on a day-to-day basis. I think even with e-com, it's like, because I have some clients that do have e-com, and we're looking at, rolling 14-day averages, right? Because one day they could be like a holiday, and then boom, it spikes up. Weekends, typically there's more sales made on the weekends than during the week, right? So if you're going day to day and it's like slow, and then you turn things off, and then on the weekend you make triple the sales that you on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday than you do Monday through Thursday, right? Then you're turning things off prematurely. So even with that business, like, you still need those numbers. Like, you can't make any business decisions on day-to-day metrics, right? You need to know the day-to-day metrics, but to make any radical changes, like, oh, I need to turn this entire thing off, that's tough.
that's tough. I would probably say the only thing that you might make a day-to-day decision is if you're spending a lot of money in the ad account where you need to probably turn something off within 24 hours. Then that is your day-to-day basis to like shift, turn, and adjust. But from a business standpoint, you don't really make day-to-day decisions.
Yeah, and even on the ad account, that's based on volume, right? So if you're getting enough volume to make like those rapid decisions, like, with ads, like, you can make a pretty solid decision off like 100 leads or so, right? Or maybe even a few thousand impressions, right? So you get a few thousand impressions and you don't get any clicks like whatsoever. The campaign sucks and it needs to be adjusted, right? So that's an environment where you could make those rapid iterations if you have the budget to be gathering enough data in a short period of time to where those adjustments are like justified, right? If I'm spending $1,000 a day, I can make iterations very, very quickly. Like, I am getting enough data to be like, all right, this needs to turn off. We need to duplicate this, change this headline, tweak this, test this. Like, you just have more data to work with. All right.
Exactly. And then another thing is, I mean, we just had a client yesterday said we're not getting enough bookings, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna send you a Loom and I'm gonna do a live audit right here, right now. So I press record and I go, okay, last week, great numbers. Previous week, great numbers. Previous week, great numbers. The last 2 days, you're complaining about you're having issues. What changed? Not really anything. All right. Business as usual. There's really nothing to change here. Like, I'm not going to make a change off 24 to 48, 48 hours of data because you're feeling emotional because you don't have enough bookings in the last 2 days, right? But the last 3 weeks is over trumping what you're thinking of the last 2 days that you're feeling. So not only do you have to look at that, because you might just have a bad week. Like, businesses have bad weeks. I mean, you're not going to be doing this. But are we doing this, but our trajectory is going up over time? That's what we want, right? It's never going to be linear right straight up every time. Sorry, but that's not how businesses work. You have bad weeks. So you got to compare what you've been doing the previous weeks. Did anything change? Has the market changed? Is there holidays? Is there what's happening like
Yeah,
overall?
any external forces kind of like giving is the environment consistent, right? Like if there's things that are different in this environment, and in business, you also have to know the seasonalities of your business, right? Like different markets have different seasons, right? So like in health and fitness, holidays are traditionally a little bit slower, but in my experiences, like those have been some of the best months. Where it gets really slow is summer, right? Everyone's trying to get in shape for the summer. And so once summertime hits, like sales just like plummet because nobody's really going to the gym. They're all going out, or they're going on vacation, or they're traveling and things like that. So they're not really like trying to start a program, right? But the months leading up to summer and the months afterwards, when they're feeling like an emotional wreck, if they felt disgusted by how they looked during the summer, then they're like, I'm trying to get back into it, right? Or when the kids go back to school, right? That's another point where there's a pretty big rush. So you just have to know the seasons of your business. And if you don't have numbers that you're tracking, then you don't really get to understand like the seasonalities. You don't see patterns. You don't see trends. You're just at the whim of whatever gets thrown at you.
Exactly. So I'll pick your brain on this one too, is what exactly do we want to track in your business? Now you can be very, very like tracking every little thing known to man, which is great. I've seen some spreadsheets like, holy crap, dude, there's a lot of data here. Right. And then there's some sheets where it's like more overview and it's enough to make an educated decision on something. Like, yes, I kind of like the more, but I'm not like, oh my God, I need this data. It's like, it's there, but I don't really look at it very much compared to what I look over here, right? So I know what I would want to track from top to bottom just to get started. Now I'll let you tell. What do you think are the most important parts to test? To not to test to track. When you're, let's just say you don't have no tracking, right? And you want to implement some type of tracking into the business. What do you feel is the most important things? All the other ones is like, cool, it's nice to know, it'll come in handy, but this is what you need like now.
Yeah, it's like you need to figure out, you need the numbers that are going to tell you a story, right? So you need and then when I'm looking to track things, I'm wanting to track inputs and I'm wanting to track outputs. So the inputs are like the leading indicators, the outputs are the lagging indicators, and you need both, right? So I need to know how many leads are coming in. I need to know how many of those leads are taking the desired action. How many of those leads that are taking the desired actions are buying, right? And the costs associated with that, right? So I need to know what those like lagging indicators are. But then I also need to know what are the things that we're doing that's creating those outcomes, right? So if it's a paid traffic acquisition system, one of the biggest inputs is the money that we're spending on the platform. So we need to track that. We need to know how much money are we spending on a day-to-day basis. And then how many leads are being generated as a result of the spend, right? So those are quick relationships that gives you a high level overview on like, okay, those are the inputs. And then if we generate the lead, how many of them are we contacting? Right? How many of them are we reaching out to? Right? So that gives us another input that creates the output of the lead taking an action. Right? So we want to know like high level metrics on like what are those core inputs and outputs throughout the entire thing, which we have on and that's how that funnel tracker sheet was designed, is like just giving you the high level inputs and outputs. How much you're spending on ads, what's the result of it? How many outreach is your team doing? Right? Are you contacting the leads? What's the result of it? And then at each step, there's an input that's required from the business and then an output that's expected, right? So once you figure out what those things are, then you can throttle down and you really don't need more than, our funnel tracker sheet has what, like 10 metrics?
It's not a lot, to be honest.
It's not that much. right?
It's
You're
not
only
that much.
filling in a few things because you don't need that much to really get a good read on how the front end acquisition is doing. So I want to have those like high level metrics. And then once you get the discipline of tracking those high level metrics, then you can go nerdy and go down even further and be like, all right, when we spend this much money on ads, right? What's our click-through rate? What's our CTR? What's our cost per impression? Because then those are inputs, right? Those are lagging indicators of a greater lead indicator, which is the creative, right? Headlines and images, the volume of creatives and all those things, like the quality of the creatives and how much it resonates with the audience. So you can start to kind of get really granular. But if you've not been tracking and you don't have the discipline of tracking, start with just high level numbers.
By like 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just build that muscle. You need to know if it's cold traffic, how much you're spending on ads. If it's organic, it's how much content you're creating, like how many pieces of content you're publishing, and then what are the impressions, right? So if you're tracking just even organic front end acquisitions, number of content being published, number of impressions, and out of the impressions, how many clicks are you getting? Out of those clicks, how many leads? Out of those leads, how many of those leads are being contacted? Out of the leads that are contacted, how many of them are either booking a sales call, submitting an application, whatever it is? Out of those applications, how many of them are turning into sales conversations? How many of those sales conversations are turning into sales? Right. So even in an organic, like I named 8. Right.
Yeah, it's not that many metrics. And it takes like less than 10 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe if that, to do it every day to track your data. Like the reason why people hate it is because they miss days and they're like, oh, I got to go back like 5 days. And then they're going back and going in their ad account and reaching out to the team. Hey, how many was, if you just make it consistent first thing in the morning, let me track the data, what happened yesterday. It takes you 5 minutes, dude. It's not that long. It's very, very small. Okay. Especially like if you're not even like doing a lot of volume, like it'll take you a minute.
Like most people, like it's just, I think it's a habit that they don't build. Right. And it's one of those habits that I was having this conversation with a client the other day. I was like, with ads is a very needy mistress. If you neglect her, she will be unfaithful and you will suffer for it. Right. And people will launch ads. It was successful for a little bit and then they forget about it. And then they're like, why is it not working anymore? It's like, dude, you have not touched it in like 3 months. What did you think was going to happen?
Oh, that's so good.
But that's ultimately like, you have to be tracking your numbers and you have to be looking and being proactive about it. And most people are just like, they want to, I don't know where the idea of set it and forget it in business came from, like certain things you can kind of set and forget with automations and with certain processes that you have in place and things like that. But nothing like your business as a whole is never set and forget, right? Even if you sold it, somebody else is coming in to manage the day-to-day for you. Like it may be set and forget for you because you sold it and you hire somebody to run it, but they're actually having to be in there running it. There's no such thing as, oh, like this business just grows without me. Like, bro, that's a pipe dream. Like that does not happen.
I mean, even automations are not even really set and forget it because tech messes up all the time.
You still have to pay attention to it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like we have clients like, oh, I haven't looked. I'm like, bro, your things haven't even been triggering. Like are you not aware of that? Like, do you not like take a peek every once in a while? Like, I'm not telling you to look every single day to make sure all my automations are working, but look every once in a while. What if that zap hasn't been firing over because of, I don't know, maybe an update happened on a program over here that messed that up. You know what I mean? We always get something like that, even from our tracking when we do with ads. Hey, update went out. Dang it, Facebook token. Iggy, can you fix that for me? Thank you. If I never looked at it, we have never been tracking the whole time for weeks because the token got disconnected because of an update that the software did, right? So you got to look in there and just see, is there any red flags? Is there like notifications going off? Like, dude, you got to still pay attention.
Yeah, and some people like they're just I think it's just naive entrepreneurship who want things to like, oh, it was working, like it should just always work. Or I should just not have to be worried about this. Or I want my business to be stable. Like there's no such thing as a stable business. Like it just does not happen. Even if you're driving and growing, if the business is growing is chaotic. If the business is dying, is chaotic. Like it's just never a point where it's just super boring and simple, because there's still things that require people to run it, right? And so long as you have people, you're dependent on people in one way, shape, or form, the business is never going to have that true stability where nothing goes wrong, right? Because even if you have if your business is dependent on technology, well, guess who built the technology? People. And people are prone to flaws. Guess what's going to happen? There's bugs. That's
always
going to happen with
bugs.
the technology. So you never, even then, if your business is just purely focused on technology, you're never able to just walk away from it and set and forget. Like you have to be looking at your numbers so you can be alerted if something's not working the way it should.
Exactly.
Right.
So let's just say, Iggy, let's just say I've been tracking my numbers. I've been putting in my data daily. When do you feel that you have to look at that data and to make an educated decision? And where do you look first? I know where I will look, right? But I want to see what you would say. If I'm tracking my numbers, I got my sheet, I submit it, or if I'm looking at it and I ask for it, when do I decide, you know what, we probably need to make an educated decision here, somewhere in the business? And then where do I look first when I go to that data? Where does my eyes track? Like I'm going to go here first and then work my way up or work my way down.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm scanning, I mean, let's just say front end acquisition numbers, because it'll be the cleanest. Because on the back end, there's lots of stuff that you can look at. It's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. But on the front end, let's say I'm looking at like our funnel tracking sheet for this week, right? I'm looking at the ad spend. I'm looking top to bottom, right? And when I'm scanning top to bottom, all I'm doing is I'm scanning to see if things are status quo, right? Okay, are we spending the amount of money that we said we need to spend? Yes. Are we generating the amount of leads that we said that we need to generate? Yes. Or is it cost per lead where we need it to be? Yes. Are we getting the amount of bookings that we say that we need to be getting? Yes. Is our cost per booking where it needs to be? Yes. So if I'm going down the list, I'm checking to see if things are like status quo. And then if I start to see, okay, well, sales numbers are low, cash collected is low, or we have so if those things start to look low, then I'm like, okay, what's the step before that? So if I'm triaging, right, I'm starting closest to the money and then working my way up. But if I'm just generally glancing through the sheet, I'm starting top to bottom and just making sure there's no like abnormalities. But all right, well, this week our cost per lead is slightly higher than what it was before, right? Has anything changed? No. Is it high enough to where it'll have such a dramatic impact throughout the rest of the funnel? No, right? Then I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty simple. We can test more creatives, right, against our control and see if we can get it cheaper. But so long as it's like within 10 to 20% within like the KPI that we need, it's not like, oh, we need to flip a table and completely start from scratch, right? So that's how I approach it. I like to look at it top to bottom, right? Just scan it top to bottom, but then I like to start closest to the money and then work our way up and make sure that it's not a process issue in terms of like sales conversion. Maybe sales team aren't calling the lead to confirm their appointments, or maybe the sales team isn't following the process, right? And just making sure like closest to the money, there's nothing that's happening that's costing us money and costing us sales conversions, which 9 out of 10 times is typically the case. But people just don't want to look at them. Like, they don't want to start there because it forces them to confront the mirror and be like, all right, well, we're getting the numbers that we need, right? And despite the fact that it would feel better to blame something that's not fully in our control, I need to look at our sales process and make sure that we're not messing it up.
Exactly. I like to do the same thing. I like to top to bottom skim, make sure everything's in perspective and what numbers we need to be hitting. Then I look at the money and be like, look, like we have a 4x here, given the fact that we might be at a KPI at the lead cost or something like that. Okay. And then, like how you said, well, what fundamentally changed? We were like, well, actually, we're only letting people in that meet this very specific criteria. Okay, well, maybe that lead cost where you thought was before is probably not the same baseline that we're looking for moving forward. It's probably this now. So you got to maybe adjust that. Like one of our clients, she's used to paying $8 a lead. Well, she always complained about quality. All right, well, we're gonna implement something, and it's probably gonna cost more. Her lead costs went dramatically up. It went to like 20 some bucks a lead, and she's never seen that. But she's had her best months, month after month, because of that. So if all you thought was, oh, my lead cost is expensive, but you're not looking down here and be like, dude, like we're having our best months ever.
Your lead cost is expensive, yes, but you're also highest return on ad spend you've ever seen, getting a higher cash collected than it's ever happened, right? So yeah, your lead costs are better, but this actually becomes your new baseline because before, when they were $8, you were looking at a 2-to-1 return on ad spend and you were barely collecting any money. So yeah, your lead cost is higher, but I would actually venture to say her lead cost now is cheaper than it's ever been.
Yes, you can look at it that way too. I know where you're going with that.
It's cheaper than it's ever been because she's making more money per lead than she's ever made.
Yes, if you look at it that way, that is correct. Yes.
And people fail to look at the big picture, right? So they're like, oh man, my lead cost went from $8 to $27. I need to get it lower. But then it's like, bro, you're collecting $8 for every $1 you spend on your $27 leads when you were collecting $2 for every $1 you spent on your $8 leads. So which one would you rather have?
Right? That right there is when you need to zoom out and be like, all right, well, who cares that I'm paying 20 some bucks a lead because I made this change, because this is what I'm getting in return because of that. So you, not only that, you have to go through each section, make sure everything looks right, making sure everything's good. But then if you see something totally out of KPI, don't be like, oh my God, I got to change it. And you got to like take a breather. What happened? Did we do anything? Zoom out. Because of that change we did it actually, produce more sales, which is all we're here to make more money? Did it make more money? Yeah. Cool. That $25 now, that's our new baseline. Okay. Based off the change that we made to get that higher quality lead through. So that's another thing. You got to zoom out. Don't be very particular about one thing. What did that one thing do for the overall outcome of the business? Which is, did it make more money, or did it book more calls, or whatever the case is?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that's just important. Like, you just got to develop the habit of tracking numbers. You got to develop the habit of actually looking at those things. And one thing we do is, for anyone who's listening and who's not tracking the numbers and wants to be able to have numbers that they can track, let's include like our funnel tracker template below for anyone to be able to download, make a copy, and then you can track it. And let's include on the resource of the website. Let's just get something set up to where people can easily download it, get access to it. We might even create a video explaining how to fill it out and how to go about looking at it. But if you can get better at tracking your numbers and knowing what's going on in your business, you're going to make better decisions. And then what you need to do is hold yourself to a data-driven process, right? Like, our process follows what we call CADE, right? You compile data, we analyze data, we develop data-driven strategy, and then we execute, and we just repeat, right? So once we execute, we compile data, we start analyzing the data, we start developing data-driven strategy, and then we just execute, just repeat that process. And if you do that, it's going to help you. It's going to force you to slow down, right? Because you need to slow down and let the data compile, right? You got to gather the data, and then you need to slow down and actually analyze the data. And then you need to slow down and start figuring out, okay, what are some strategies that we can start to develop based on this data? And then you execute, right? Most people just look, they don't even analyze, they just look, something looks wrong. And then they'll like start breaking shit and changing random stuff, causing even more problems, you know?
Right. Exactly what you said. Everything, all that makes sense. And not like, let's just going back to the lead cost. Lead cost bumped up. Oh, shut everything off, and go back to what we were doing. If you didn't analyze it and you didn't compile the data, you didn't analyze it, and why did this happen? You would have made a very, very bad decision for the business because of doing that. So, nope, makes total sense.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who are listening, we'll include those in the show notes. So we'll have like some type of resource that you can download for tracking your numbers, and we'll even put together a little mini training on how to analyze it and how to make those decisions. And one of the things that we do, even as part of like Charlie, is like we do give our clients and those users the ability to track different parts of their funnel. And then awesome thing about using AI is the fact that it tracks all the conversations that it's having, all the messages that it's sending. So we can just look and see how it's performing and make micro tweaks based on how it's performing, right? But overall, so hope you guys found this helpful. If you like episodes like this, where we're just riffing on things that we're considering and looking at in the business, like it and share with somebody that you think would find it helpful. All right. Till next time, stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms.